Last season, I played in 18 Dynasty leagues, and I know what you're thinking. No, I didn't touch a single blade of grass between September and January. I was too busy making trades. In fact, I made over 100 trades during the 2023 fantasy season, and today I'm going to explain how. My name is Paul Patterson, and this is Pure Potential. Before we get started today, I just want to remind you, if you enjoy the content, to hit the subscribe button. Studies show that subscribers to this channel have a 100% chance of winning their Dynasty leagues, and yet over 70% of you aren't subscribed. You're just doing both of us a disservice. Anyway, playing in 18 Dynasty leagues really isn't as insane as it sounds. Once you learn how to prioritize the important stuff and make decisions quickly, which is something I'm still working on, it's not that time consuming. Honestly, I've thought about making a video on some time-saving strategies for those of you that do play in a lot of leagues. I'm just not sure how many sickos are in the audience. But if you consume a lot of Dynasty content, I honestly think you should probably play in more leagues. It just gives you way more opportunities to take advantage of any edges that you might have, anything that you're learning from the videos or the podcasts or the articles that you're consuming. You get to try that out in multiple leagues. So if there's a player that you think is a good value, you're not locked into what one manager thinks of that player. You now have 5 or 10 opportunities to go and acquire that player. Something I found as I played in more leagues is that I'm able to actually act on my opinions more frequently. But as I was saying, I'm a very active trader in Dynasty, especially during the season. And the Dynasty market is just becoming more and more fickle and reactionary. It's a really ripe atmosphere for making trades if you know what you're doing. Now, my goal today isn't to turn you into some Dynasty day trader. What I want to do is reflect on a handful of trades that I made last season. And I really want to dig into the reasons behind those deals and the patterns and trade structures that I think are actionable and repeatable. So all the deals that you're going to see in this video were made with other sharp Dynasty managers. This is not a lesson on fleecing people that don't know how to play Dynasty. You should be able to make trades similar to the ones you see today in any league, regardless of difficulty level or experience level of your league mates. And the first thing I want to point out about trading is maybe a little bit obvious, but it's much easier to get trades done with managers who have opposing goals. Sometimes this is just, I need a wide receiver and you need a running back, and we can make that happen with an easy swap. But for me, it's more often about timeline. It's if I'm rebuilding, I want to go make deals with the contenders. If I'm contending, I want to go make deals with the rebuilders. But I made this first trade that I'm going to show you as a contender. This trade was completed, I think, around week 13, and I'm at the bottom of this trade screenshot here. So I received Tyler Lockett, Rachaad White, and Ezekiel Elliott in exchange for Javonte Williams, Jerome Ford, and a 2025 second. So in this league, I was positioned to get a bye week, and I really just wanted to strengthen my starting lineup a little bit heading into the playoffs. This is a 12-team start 11 league, so it's actually really hard to field a complete lineup of studs. At this point in the season, Ramondre Stevenson was out, and Ezekiel Elliott was expected to start the remainder of the year. And then Rachaad White was also having a very good season as well. And I think I was maybe a little bit low on wide receiver depth. I wasn't sure who I was going to start in the playoff weeks. So all that being said, I had reason to believe all 3 of these players could increase my odds a little bit heading into the playoffs. But it's important to remember that trades made later in the season are actually less likely to have an impact on the outcome of your season. Picking up a few extra points per game for a few weeks at the end of the year is just statistically unlikely to swing the outcome of any games. With that in mind, I'm really only making these types of win now trades if I think there's a good chance the value is going to look pretty even after the season's over. I'm not willing to take on a big value loss after the season's over just so that I can have these marginal edges. And I think that's the case with this trade. You know, for what it's worth, Keep Trade Cut prefers my side by quite a bit. At the very least, I think it still looks pretty even 7 months later. So I don't regret making the deal, even though I didn't actually win the league. The players that I traded for didn't help me win any games, but it's okay because I didn't really burn myself on value. I just made a deal that helped me a little bit more in the moment and didn't really hamper me in the long run. I'm also much more inclined to make this type of trade where I'm making small upgrades to multiple spots for a low cost, as opposed to deals where I'm trading away my future first or larger pieces. There's just more ways that can go wrong. So this is more often the type of trade that I'm looking to make late in the year. But I'm not always a contender. Sometimes I'm on the other side of it. I know that I've regularly spoken against rebuilding on this channel. In fact, I put the words never rebuild in the thumbnail of my last video, but that's really about managers that are too eager to rebuild. They're rebuilding when they don't need to, sacrificing valuable win equity for no reason. When it becomes obvious that my team is not going to compete in a given season, I do rebuild, and I do it aggressively. And I don't try to hold on to certain players. Nothing drives me crazier than managers who are rebuilding and they're like DK Metcalf isn't available. He's a cornerstone. I'm building around DK Metcalf. It's like, I don't do that. I am burning this thing to the ground. If I'm going to get good value on a player, that player is gone. So here you're going to see 3 trades that I made in the same league between week 1 and week 2. This really helped me secure the 101 in that league. And I think that I got good value in all 3 of these deals. Whenever I'm selling off pieces, future firsts are my primary target. If you've watched my videos before, you know that I value future first very highly. And you can see, if you're looking at these 3 trades, I actually got a first in each one of them. I also lucked into Devon Achane at basically his lowest point of value. I just sort of had him thrown into the trade to balance things out, but I liked his profile. He hadn't played much in week 1 or week 2, so the other manager was, a little bit down on him. Ended up working out for me in a big way. The last note here is I think it's a lot easier to acquire future firsts early in the season. At this point, most of the managers in your league are full of optimism. They think their team can win it all, and they haven't fallen behind in the standings yet. Everybody has that number 1 seed, number 2 seed within reach. And so more managers are willing to send away a first round pick if they're getting back something they think is really going to help them. This is another rebuilding trade that I think has a valuable lesson attached to it, which is that you should be willing to buy or sell any player at the right price. I had Justin Herbert on my rebuilding team, and a lot of managers would just hold on to a guy like Justin Herbert and say, I don't need to trade him. He's still young. He's a building block for my team. But knowing that Justin Herbert was the QB1 through the first 4 weeks, I was dangling him in trades left and right because I thought I had a chance to really get a premium for him, knowing what he was adding to lineups at the time. And I didn't need the points at all. Eventually, I was able to make something work with another manager in the league who had a really stacked roster, but they did have a little bit of a hole at quarterback because Kyler Murray was on their team and he wasn't playing and nobody knew when he was going to play. And so we made this deal where I sent him Justin Herbert and Christian Kirk, and he sent me Kyler Murray and his next 2 first-round picks. Those picks for him were projected late. He was willing to give those up to get, at the time, the QB1 in fantasy, scoring 24 points per game. And I was fine with it because I expected after the season for Kyler and Herbert to be pretty close in value. And this season didn't mean anything to me. So sending away Herbert to get Kyler with a big plus on top, that was just a no-brainer for my team at the time. And looking at startup ADP now, I mean, Herbert's only going 3 or 4 spots ahead of Kyler. So I think that's one that worked out well for me. And it only worked out because I was willing to trade a cornerstone asset from my team. So those are your rebuilding and contending trades. Those are the easiest deals to get done because you and the other manager have opposing goals. You can work together. You can find a way to make a deal that is win-win. But other trades that I make are just the result of strong player takes. If I think a player is just wildly mispriced, either way too expensive or way too cheap, I'm going to go into all my leagues and send out offers accordingly. The player that I traded for most in 2023 was Puka Takeaways. I entered the season with 0 shares. I wasn't on him. I didn't know who he was as a prospect. I dropped the ball completely. But by week 6, I had him in 5 different leagues. The first of these trades happened right after week 1. I was very intrigued by this rookie wide receiver who had 15 targets in the first game. So I sent away a 2nd-round pick that looked like it was going to be late. I figured I would just roll the dice, right? The guy that I get in the late 2nd, what are the odds that they're going to pan out anyway? Let's just see if this Puka guy is for real. And then in week 2, he had 20 targets. And at that point, I was totally bought in. I was like, you do not accidentally have 35 targets in 2 games if you're not something. Maybe he's not a superstar, but I'm confident this guy is something. He is good. So I had less floor concerns there that he was just going to disappear. And at that point, I was willing to pay a little bit more. I sent out offers for him in every single league. And in hindsight, obviously knowing what he is now, these offers were not aggressive enough. But I did get a bite after week 2, and I sent Jameson Williams away straight up for Puka Takeaways. The next week in another league, I traded Calvin Ridley for Puka. And then a week later, I traded away my first in a league where I was holding on to the 1 seed along with Romeo Doubs for Puka Takeaways. His price just kept rising, but I kept buying in. Now, these trades aren't as repeatable because they're specific to one player, but I do think there are some lessons here. The first one here is I wasn't just trading to trade. I saw an opportunity to get in early on a potential superstar player, and I was willing to accept the risk associated with that. The second is that I didn't get anchored by the initial price. In each successive week, I found myself having to give up more and more to get Puka because the market was buying in on him more and more. But I didn't just stubbornly hold on to that week 1 price. Like, I got him for a late 2nd. Why can't I still get him for a late 2nd? You have to adjust to what the market's doing, and you have to constantly reevaluate whether the market's price is, have we reached a fair equilibrium or are we still on the rise? As long as I was still seeing that potential for value growth, I kept buying into him. But as soon as we got to the point where people were valuing him as a top 5 wide receiver, even though that wasn't necessarily wrong, I stopped going after him aggressively because it wasn't any different than buying any other top 5 wide receiver. I would only be trading for him at that point because I'm a team in need of a top 5 receiver, not just because I'm trying to buy in on an asset that I think is going to gain value for my team. I also think these Puka trades illustrate my point from the beginning of the video that playing in a lot of leagues can be beneficial. I was playing in 18 leagues at the time. I got Puka in 5 of them, but I sent out offers in 18 different leagues. So the prices that I got, they're not necessarily the prices you could get in every dynasty league, but by playing with a lot of different managers with a lot of different perspectives, I was able to take advantage of a strong take that I held more than if I was just in 2 or 3 leagues. Now, I want to wrap up today's video by showing you a trade that I would take back if I could. And I don't think there's a really strong lesson here, except that you can't expect to win every trade. And if you get burnt by a trade, don't let it turn you off to trading altogether. Don't let it make you too cautious or hesitant. You're just not going to win all your deals, no matter how smart you are, no matter how good your takes are. You're going to look back on a lot of deals 6 months later and think, how could I have been so stupid? So after week 2, I traded Tank Dell along with Kylan Granson for some reason for a 2025 second. I had drafted Tank Dell in the 4th round of the rookie draft. And honestly, I was just thrilled to be getting anything back for him. I had kind of overlooked any of the green flags in his prospect profile. I didn't think he was much of anything. At this point, I didn't realize CJ Stroud was going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And so I cashed out. And that's okay. I still made a tidy profit on my investment in Tank Dell. I just obviously wish that he was still on my team rather than that future second. But again, that's just the kind of thing that is naturally going to happen when you're a high volume trader. Honestly, the goal is just to win 60% of your trades. If you can do that, you're going to be just fine. Now, there are plenty of other reasons to trade. There are plenty of other structures for getting trades done, but that'll have to be a topic for another video. Hopefully these tips will help you get some more trades done this summer and into the season. If you enjoyed this video, prove it by hitting the subscribe button and helping me get to 2,000 subscribers. And if you're looking for more Dynasty strategy content like this, check the link in the description. I've got a whole playlist link there with all of my Dynasty strategy videos. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.